I'm just such a fan. This is great. I am so thrilled we've almost got a full house in this room because we all know what it's like when it's the last session of the day, but this is going to be, no pressure, but the humdinger of a session. Without further ado, I'm going to just simply introduce our wonderful host, Jess Charles. Many people know her because, I don't know whether they call you a Micebook queen or a Micebook legend or any of the above. So Jess has done a lot of work with Chet and the team at Micebook and now is the head of campaigns at Wanda. And she is going to be running what is going to be a fun, interactive session. Dear CEO, a letter to my future self. Big round of applause for Jess and our panel, please.
Thank you for the intro. Is this on? Yeah. Okay, just very quickly before we start, just wanted to say thank you for Micebook for having us. Chet always does an amazing job of giving space to people who are new to the industry, and today we've got a really exciting panel up on stage, so I'm going to get these guys to introduce themselves. This session definitely for kind of this panel and also for anyone else in the room is to really kind of explore the idea of positive manifestation and thinking about how you can kind of think about your future and attract that future to you. And I think, you know, as a generation, we're very good at being very positive, and I want to make sure that that definitely comes through today in this talk. So we're going to keep it uplifting, but we're also going to explore quite a few challenges that our young leaders are facing. So yeah, let's get on with it. So if I could maybe start with Anna at the end, if you could just introduce yourself, where you're from, your job title and how long you've been in the industry.
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name's Anna. I'm a project manager at Principal Global Events. I joined 5 years ago as a project executive straight out of university. So everything I've learned about events has kind of been developed at Principal. And yeah, I love working there as well.
My name's Bethan Lowe and I work for Crescendo Events. I've been within this company for about a year now as a senior project manager and previously at a company called Motive Action for about 9 years, so 10 years in total.
So my name's Joanna Milley. I work at Top Banana as a venue sourcing specialist. I worked at CWT for 10 years before, doing various roles such as project executive, project manager, venue sourcing. Just decided I liked venue sourcing, so doing that now full time.
Hello, my name is Naomi. I graduated in 2019, so I'm quite a new graduate into the industry. But during the pandemic, I founded a community called Event Grads for event management students and graduates like myself. And I recently went freelance and currently project executive with the wonderful Oddity Events and Marketing. So that's me.
Hi everyone, I'm Heather. Today I've obviously got my Micebook hat on, but I am also freelance. I'm ex-Black Tomato, and yeah, so I'm project manager currently for Micebook and a couple of other clients.
Thank you, panel. So yeah, as you can see, a really broad panel. We've got everybody from new to the industry, freelancing, established. So I think it's good to hear kind of varied experiences. So I'm going to kickstart the conversation. Maybe going to go to Anna back at the end. And the question to you is, what are the main challenges facing young leaders today? And what did they look like pre-pandemic? And what do they look like now?
Yeah, I think there's kind of a whole host of challenges that I guess is very personal to everybody, but talking from my experience, I would say one of the greatest challenges now post-pandemic is, I guess, kind of having a bit more distance between myself as like a PM level and our directors. So remote working kind of puts a bit more of a distance between you and the senior leadership team. So I just think post-pandemic, as a company, we've also tried to work really hard with rebuilding that open door between us and our senior leadership team, where previously we could just pop into our director Anupa's office or, you know, just go and get her advice on anything. But now it's always a little bit more difficult because you don't know like what meetings she's involved in or what her day-to-day kind of calendar looks like. So I just think it's really important now, post-pandemic, that I still am able to be kind of mentored by her and have the access to her knowledge and experience. And just ensuring that that still happens rather than that door being completely shut, because now I don't really see her as often anymore in the office.
Yeah, and then Beth, same question to you.
I guess mine's a bit more generic. I would say mine's based on culture. I think for young leaders, I think that's always a difficult thing to try and, should we say, break a culture in a business. If there's been a business that's been established and has been there for about 25 to 30 years, how do you get your point across, and how do you prove it's a good point to be made? So I think that's kind of my point, and how we work around that with our leaders, as well as being young leaders, to make that point come across, whether it's good or whether it's a learning curve for the business to try and work upon.
And we're going to get into some of those points a bit later on. Jo, for you?
So I think the struggle for us at the moment is rebuilding a team after the pandemic. A lot of teams were obviously cut down due to staff having to leave, and now business is coming back. So for us and my team, it's looking how we develop that and how we get new people in, how we can help them, mentor them to become young leaders.
Naomi?
Thank you. Kind of leading on from that actually is, I guess, the routes into industry and understanding what those routes are, that university isn't the only route and there's many different routes into industry and what they look like and how that journey can start, and, you know, attracting and retaining young people in the industry, because what we've heard from universities, for example, is that the people that are, what the word I'm looking for, joining university courses or learning degrees and courses and things like that as completely lower than it was before the pandemic. So I guess it's attracting that young talent and how they can enter the industry and making it inclusive and accessible to a lot of people to enter the industry in lots of different ways.
Yeah, and mass resignation was a big thing. And I know we're going to touch on kind of what that means for you guys when you're losing kind of people within your business to go to get that knowledge that they may have had because they sat in that business for 20, 30 years, and actually working from home, to Anna's point. And I think also thinking about the fact that lots of people coming in may be, you know, less experienced or, you know, not inexperienced, but don't have as much knowledge as previous people who've left. What does that mean for you guys? Do you still feel like you've got somebody to go to? So yeah, we'll definitely get into that. And then Heather?
I'd say I'll go industry-wide. So leadership, trying to build your way up in an agency is hard enough, but it's even harder when our industry is so much based on networking and relationships. So you go to all these networking events, and there's lots of suppliers, but they don't care about talking to you because you're not a senior manager. You're not the person, you're not the decision maker. So it's hard to try and sort of get your name out there, do all the networking when someone forgets you, or they'll say, oh yeah, I've been on a fam trip with your boss. And you're like, oh, great. Like, or they'll talk about, oh, we did this event with your agency 5 years ago. And you're like, oh, okay, I wasn't at the agency then. So I'd probably say, trying to get your face out there in the industry and be respected and remembered when you don't have the job title.
Yeah, and I used to be Heather's manager, so I'm definitely guilty of some of that when we worked together at Black Tomato. So yeah, some really, I think, valid points there, and definitely stuff we want to get into. I think culture and that sort of nomadic working is definitely what I can see, somebody who works kind of both in the office and from home, but looking at new people coming into my team, like, it is a huge issue. And I haven't nailed how to kind of engage the team that are kind of new to the industry and make sure that they do feel a part of something, because it's so much harder working from home. So I don't know from you guys, I know we've got a real mixed here. Heather's a kind of freelancer, she's mostly at home at the moment. Naomi, you kind of work for yourself as well. Jo, you do a mix from what we discussed last week. And then Beth, similar? Mix of office and home?
I'm fully home pretty much. Well, it depends if we've got events and anything like that, then obviously I go where that should be. Yeah. So I'd like to say I'm home-based, but actually I'm based pretty much everywhere and anywhere, so...
And was that a choice to be both?
Yeah, I actually moved in... So I used to live in Hertfordshire, and I moved into London to try and get a new agency, and by luck, I found an agency that's based in Hampshire, so it's kind of the complete opposite direction to where I wanted to go. An agreement was signed on that I would be home-based, dependent on. Yeah. So it came at the right time for me, really.
Yeah. So for Anna, I know that we spoke on Friday, and I think it was quite clear that your preference would be in the office, because I think it supports your development and you have that visibility that I think a lot of people feel like they're missing from their leaders. So this kind of idea of sort of he who shouts the loudest, I don't love personally, but I also think that and this is something for you guys to discuss amongst yourselves, do you think that being in the office allows you access to those people, and actually you'll be more noticed than you would be if you were working from home by your kind of elders, the ones who are effectively responsible for promoting you and developing you? Do you think that that's something that is an issue? Go to Joe, maybe. Oh, no, sorry, go back to Anna.
Again, back to my experience, I think it was really, really valuable for me to be in the office. So just the conversations that you hear from people that are more senior than you, just the things you pick up, how you talk to suppliers, or especially if you come out of university and you have absolutely no experience in the industry at all. And like what you're saying, you might be in meetings with your like senior managers, or they might be in a room next door and they overhear what you say, but that wouldn't happen if you're at home necessarily. So yeah, I think it's important to have a hybrid. We're probably still all like figuring out what the ideal situation looks like, and how, if that's like 2 days in the office, 3 days, whatever it might be. But I do think it's really important that leaders now don't underestimate the value of being in the office and how that can help build up someone's like work progression. I think it's really important.
Just out of interest, how many people in here prefer to be in the office? Okay, nearly half, which is really interesting. I know there's a mix of people in here, from young leaders to kind of established, but yeah, it's interesting, and I think you're absolutely right, like it's really hard. And I don't know what the solution is, to be honest. Like, I think we are now in a situation where people have or prefer that work-life balance. And I think for some people, like for me, it works out that I can be at home more than in the office. But I know that's not the case for everybody. Joe, what about you? Because I know we spoke about this on Friday.
Yeah, so I really enjoy the sort of hybrid working. And my venue sourcing team, there's 3 of us, and the other 2 guys are based up in the Midlands. So I'm the face of the team down in London. So that's a first for my team, and I think it's been really valuable because I can come to things like this a lot more. It's more accessible for me to be able to help the team be promoted down here, but also it gives the team a bit more of a scope. So if people do decide, if we do employ people in London, they can be with me in the London office, and it's just a bit broader. But because when I joined the team, I am quite experienced and settled within my job role, I was confident enough to be able to do that from home and not feel the same way that Anna does, which I would have, 7 years ago. So it was good for me to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Naomi, what about you? Because I know this has actually been, I'd say for you, a really successful couple of years. And I actually feel like I can't imagine your model being anything other than it is now. So what does that mean for you?
Yeah, it's funny because before the pandemic, I was actually working from home, like before it was a thing, for a company that was up in like the islands, and I was down in Glasgow. So it's very interesting now that it's become a thing, and I'm glad that others are doing it. But I enjoy working from home. I enjoy the flexibility. I think that's something that a lot of young people are looking for, that flexibility and able to find that kind of work-life balance their way. But I do think, as well, as a young person, they're so impressionable. They need to be a sponge. To be in the office allows for them to learn so much more than they would from at home. So it's hard to find that balance, I think. But I do think that kind of generation is looking for flexibility and to have those conversations and not just have it assumed that they want to be either at home or working from. But I have been working from home for a very long time now, and it's great. But then I'm able to come down to things like this, and I'm able to go to offices of those that I work for, which is great. So it's a great learning curve to have all those experiences, I think.
Yeah, and I've seen friends and colleagues and industry friends who have actually uprooted their life to another country and made that remote working like really work for them, where they've, relocated themselves halfway around the world. And actually it's amazing. And I think if you can do that, there's such opportunity in this remote working. Freelance world, and I think this is something so I've seen Heather go from working in an agency full-time to then kind of starting in the freelance world. And I think interested to know how many freelancers are in the room today. We're rooting for you. Woo! Just thinking about opportunities for career development in the freelance world, like what does that look like for you now, Heather?
Yeah, that's one thing I am still yet to work out, because that was always something that I loved about being in an agency, is the fact that your career progression. You have people above you which you like sort of inspire you, you're working towards that, you've got a as certain agencies, you've got a personal development plan that you're working way towards, whereas freelance, you definitely don't have that. I think definitely mentors and coaches, that's something that I'm looking into, because trying to figure out what my path is going to be. If it's building my own business, I'm not sure yet. But yeah, in terms of like freelance and working from home, obviously they come hand in hand because I don't have an office. But when I was in an agency, I think that the hybrid way of working would be great, as long as the conversations are open with your management, that how is this going to affect your development, and things like being invited to meetings even though you're not in the office and you just happen to drop in, even if you're like there to spectate on the Zoom call. Sort of just be aware that the job role isn't everything that the person has. I think people first rather than job role.
Yeah,
job
I think
role
there's
first.
so much, particularly for young leaders, so many people focus on your title. And I remember when you were in the process of promotion in our team, and we debated that kind of junior project manager, senior exec role for such a long time. And actually, when I think about it now, you know, you're absolutely right. Whatever we put on that signature, like that shouldn't mean that you're, you know, any less importance. And I think often that is overlooked by leaders, to be honest with you. It's like, let's just cross-check the job titles to make sure all our clients are happy that it's a room full of senior people. And it's terrible. And actually, I've seen that behaviour being driven by clients as well. I had a client very recently, I won't name any names, who commented in the call that she felt that the team to her on paper was very junior. And it wasn't a junior team. It's just that she had a real mixed bag of job titles. And I had to spend 20 minutes just sort of debating with her and almost convincing her why it was a really strong team. And we're now probably 6 weeks into that project. And I think, you know, the proof is in the pudding, and she's seen that work out. But I mean, you know, in this day and age, I think clients are still questioning, you know, levels of seniority. And I think that is definitely down to agency leaders and people who are in those positions of responsibility of allocating a team to make sure that you are, you know, putting forward a team, but also empowering these guys and teaching the client not to kind of, you know, focus on something like that. Going back to mentoring, somebody mentioned it. How many of you guys have got a mentor? What does your mentor look like, Beth?
I guess it's not officially on paper, this is my mentor, but I come from quite a small team, so the business is probably about 6 to 10, and that means my line manager is my MD. So even if it's official or unofficial, I've got a mentor there that I need. We're also quite lucky to have an amazing silent chairwoman that is also available for us if we want mentoring sessions. So I'm quite fortunate where I am at the moment.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Jo, just jumping to your mentor.
For me, it's just my managers at the moment, because they are more experienced than I am, and there's just the three of us. So we kind of work together quite a lot and have a lot of discussions on moving forward in different ways within the team.
And did you choose who within your team is your mentor? Have you just got one person, or is it a collective?
Well, no, it's not a choice, but I think it's just the way it's happened, and it's also just the way we work together. And also for me, it's a lot about communication and how we communicate together. Yeah. So none of it is official, but I would say that they mentor me because the way they help me learn and help me progress, it's a discussion, and that works for all three of us, I would say. Personally.
Yeah, so I guess it's not official, you know, you're not assigned to one person, it's not as
it's not
formalised.
A scheme, if you like, it's just...
You've got somebody to go to.
I think, and I don't think we've ever probably pushed the word mentor around the three of us either, but if I was to say, I would say that they were mentoring me, because they are expanding my knowledge through discussion, communication and advice.
Yeah. And you're right, I think mentor means different things to different people, and some schemes are much more formalised and some are not, and I guess you have to work out what's right for you and what you want from that relationship as well.
Some companies offer sort of formal mentor schemes as well, and that in different industries, these industry, you know, so it depends how it works for the company, I suppose, as well.
Anna?
When I started Principal, I was, I guess, unofficially assigned a mentor. One of our ex-senior project managers was kind of helping me through and really explaining everything to me. We worked on a lot of projects together. And Steph was just someone that I could look to and say like, oh, what does 24-hour DDR mean again? Or, just your small questions that, again, when you have no experience whatsoever, it's just nice to have that one person where you can turn to and they'll help you out with whatever you need. And also I think it's good because they push you to do things that you might not want to do. So it would have been very easy on a lot of my projects with Steph for her to jump in and negotiate a certain point of a contract or figure something out in a costing sheet. But Steph would always turn to me and it would be kind of like tough love. She'd say, no, like, you need to do it. And I'd look at her like, what? Like, how do I do that? And she would then coach me through and say, this is like the best approach to do this, or never leave me and just throw me into it, but just there to guide me and coach me on the best practices and kind of advice for working through things. So to me, it was really, really valuable.
And did you go out and ask her proactively, or was that just something that happened by default because she happened to be your manager?
No, she was never kind of my direct line manager, and it was from above. So Anupa who's our director, did assign Steph to that role. But again, it's not like an official scheme that we have as such, where there's set meetings or anything like that. It's very like much informal kind of scenario, but she was always there, and we were purposely placed on a lot of projects together to help that development.
Yeah. And you still got Steph in your life?
No, Steph adopted a baby last year, so she's taken a break now. But now it's mostly Anupa who kind of acts as mentors, kind of PM level and above.
Yeah, and I think that's really important as well, because you had a mentor that had to step away, and then you are still kind of 5 years into your career, so you feel like you still need that. And I think lots of us in the room know Anupa, and the fact that she kind of stepped up to that is amazing, because I think at that level, what you don't often get is very, very senior leaders like stepping into that role of like mentor and mentee relationship, because we know that the bandwidth isn't always there. So yeah, is she here today?
I think she's still on holiday at the moment today, but she'll be here tomorrow, I think.
Okay. Naomi, what about you? Because obviously, you went out solo, and who's your go-to? Who do you check in with? Sounding board.
So I have a few unofficial mentors, I guess. I did a scheme during lockdown that started around the same time that I started Event Grads, called EM Mentoring, which was focused on event students and graduates and matched with industry leaders. And I got someone from Visit Scotland who ended up being 5 minutes down the road. So we went on walks, which was great, and it was a nice way of doing mentoring, because I had never done mentoring before. It was not even mentioned while I was at uni or anything like that. So it was a really interesting experience to get that kind of in the way where it was quite structured to begin with, so that we could go through goals and things, because that was something I'd never really planned on or gone through before. But then during lockdown with Event Grads, it was a route that I never expected, and a route that I never planned. So now I've got a lot of people that I can go to talk about what Event Grads looks like in the future, and like business and stuff, because business is something I never thought I wanted to do in my life ever. So yeah, with mentorship, I think I quite like the unofficial in regards to it being quite like casual, and you can have those conversations and you just know you've got someone to go to about specific things. But I think it's good to have more than one as well. I've heard that down the line, but I've also experienced that, because it's good to get other people's opinions. It's good to chat to people who are experts in specific ways and stuff. So I think it's a really nice way of going about things.
Yeah, definitely. And I think different people for different things, right? Everyone's got their own sort of unique skill set as well. I also think mentors outside of your industry is really valuable. I think if you can find somebody outside of your everyday, they can just bring like a really nice, fresh perspective on stuff as well. Heather, what about now for you for a mentor? Are you looking?
Yeah, I'm in the market.
So if anyone wants to mentor Heather, she's amazing, by the way. So yeah.
No, it's definitely something. I mean, even talking to people today and a couple of sessions that we've had, I never thought about it before. I guess when I was at an agency, I had people senior than me that I would always go to and ask questions, but they were always project-based and it was never career-based. And I imagine it's quite nice having someone separate where you can kind of like a safe space that you can talk to them about career development and give you advice and stuff. So yeah, no, definitely.
Okay, we'll find you one by the end of the week. As young leaders, where are you guys where is your passion being driven from? Where are you finding your focus? Start with Naomi. You looked like you were really thinking there.
I was trying to think. So I found my passion during lockdown, and it was one. So I love the event industry, and I, very short overview, didn't know what I wanted to do in school, hated it, went to uni, did really well, enjoyed it, loved it, got into the industry, and I was doing a job that I did not enjoy when I first came out, and I started to think that this wasn't for me, and like I couldn't imagine what I wanted to do. Career progression was not something I thought about. I was like, I do not know where I want to go. And during the lockdown, I met a lot of you wonderful people, and I was able to see what the industry actually looks like, and outside of Scotland as well, because the industry is quite different than it feels in Scotland. So it was great to get a broader perspective and find that passion for the industry, for the people, the fact that it's so varied, so interdisciplinary. Like, I just love that. And I think now meeting other students and graduates and young people into the industry and how they're at that stage where they're so excited about the industry makes me feel excited. So that's kind of where it comes from, other people, and being able to meet others, because I guess that's why we're here.
Beth?
I think kind of my passion and focus, I guess, comes from what you're good at, and I think that's quite hard to find where you are, because your job role can be quite broad, I guess, and there's so many different sectors. And the conversation I had recently was to decide what job role I want to take next, whether that's a project manager, an event manager, a sales role, and understanding the difference in them all. So I think for me it was figuring out what I'm really good at, and then from that a passion falls, I think.
Yeah. Jo?
So for me, that's kind of what I did, because I've sort of got my passion now after trying various different roles within agency. So I've done the on-site live events, project management, and then I just realised that the one thing I really, really like to do is to find the best venue for the clients and to surprise them and to make them see things in a different way. And so I then started to focus on that, and also I'd done a lot of travelling with on-site work, and I was ready to sort of slow that down a bit as well. But passion did change through that period as well. Like, my passion at one time was travelling on events and doing that, but it has changed for me now.
Me too. It's exhausting. Anna, same question for you.
Yeah, I agree with Bethan. So I think for me, the real benefit of working for a more medium-sized agency is that I haven't been pigeonholed into one specific area of the event world. So we literally do everything from the venue sourcing right through to reconciliation. So every day, every event I've ever done has been completely different. And I have loved that aspect of it. And yeah, I think that's when maybe a few years down the line, I'll decide that I only want to focus in on one part of it. But at the moment, I really enjoy doing the full A to Z scope of it.
Do you think that certain roles fast track you to kind of that senior position? Or do you feel, because you guys all do slightly different roles. Jo, your venue find, we've got project management on here, we've got Naomi. How would you define your role?
Someone defined it for me, please. Freelance?
Yeah,
I'm
freelance.
just going with that,
A bit of everything, basically.
Yeah.
But I think what I've seen, and it's something that actually I think leaders need to recognise, that the roles that maybe are focused on making the money are not necessarily the roles that will fast track you to the top. And I think there's often a misconception and an error, I think, on the leader's part, that actually, you know, the people that are driving the projects and the people that are driving the clients and ensuring that those clients return are the ones that should be recognised. And actually, there's still a pathway for them to kind of get to the top. And we haven't got time to get into kind of women and the roles that we fulfill. But I think, do you guys all feel that you have a really clear kind of pathway? And I don't know necessarily where each of you kind of see yourself going, but it'd be good to understand that. So maybe Jo, because obviously you're on the venue find side. Are you clear? And you've also been doing this role for 10 years, on and off?
I've been in this company since November doing this role,
Okay,
but
yeah,
for the last 10 years it was varied.
Yeah.
So I think for me, again, like I said earlier, that I'm sort of the only person in my team in London, it'll be about developing a team for me, and with my existing managers and figuring out how that works, because obviously due to the pandemic there was a lot of redundancies made and their team went from 10 to 2, I think. So that's going to have to come back with the amount of work we're getting. So for me, I'd like to sort of help them nurture something here, and then because I also realised I don't really like people management that much. That's a learning that I've had. But just to probably work on the strategy more of the team and the communication of that with the team as well.
And that's a good point, actually, because what does leadership look like? Like, it doesn't necessarily mean you are in charge of, 10 people. That's often not the case. Usually the people at the top have the least amount of people reporting into them. And I think it's nice to hear that you're really honest about that. And I think it also gives hope for people who don't like people, because that's also okay. That you can, yeah, some of them. But you can also get to the top without having to, manage a team, because let's face it, managing a team is really, really stressful. But yeah, I think it's good that you've kind of found your niche, I guess, and you feel like there is a pathway for you. What about you, Heather?
In terms of, that's always one thing that I've thought of when I was in an agency and you're sort of going through the promotions and everything, because everything is project-based. I don't know whether it feels slower than it would be if you're doing sales and you can sort of have quick results and prove yourself more. But with projects, you're doing something for 3 months, and if you need to check a box for the next thing, it might be you have to wait for an event to come round to check those boxes. So I guess maybe ops does feel a bit like a slower progression. One thing that I found quite interesting, I don't know whether this is set, but at the event the other week, that when we were talking to the agency leaders, a lot of them came from like marketing backgrounds. Not many of them that spoke came from operations backgrounds. And I don't know whether that's because people in ops like doing ops and they like doing the projects rather than the more business side of it. For me, I like running events. I like doing the ops. So I don't know what that would mean in terms of progression to, I don't know, leader level when you still want to run the event, don't want to let go of all of that bit. So I guess having a conversation with your boss or whoever to work out what do you know where you want to end up and what is the right path for you, because.
And I think sometimes you've got to drive that if you don't necessarily have a proactive kind of leadership team above you. And let's be honest, like not everybody does. So it's kind of up to you to go forward to your senior and say, look, this is where I want to get to. And also understand, and I think one of the things that I've definitely seen as a manager is people want timelines. They want to know how long it's going to take me to get there, and they want really clear kind of indications of like what does the next stage look like, both from a title, both from a salary side of things, and also how long. And I think if you're not getting that, you have to drive that yourself, which is really, really hard. So yeah, it's a difficult one. Does anybody on the panel feel like they have a really kind of like solid or a sort of a strong like personal development plan in place with their business? And if not, what do you think leaders should be doing differently to make sure that you guys feel like you're clear on, what your next 2, 5, 10 years look like? Maybe start with Beth. See you nodding.
Yes, I was quite lucky recently, actually. I brought the conversation up with my MD and it was taken really well. We kind of done it casually over a dinner, over a glass of wine, and done a discussion of where do I want to be in 5 years' time. And that's part of the reason why I came to, obviously there was pandemic, but that's part of the reason why I was out there looking for a new agent anyway. So I would say I've got quite a firm but quite a flexi development plan in place. It's not in black and white, but we've both had that discussion. I know where I want to be in 5 years' time, and we both know that, and we know we're going to do regular check-ins to ensure that them steps have been made kind of in between the next 6 months sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think there was a definite drop in like personal development plans and what they actually look like post-pandemic. A lot of managers were just like, we just need to survive, let's not worry about how or what that means for you. And actually, I was witness to some of that, and I thought it wasn't ideal because, you guys weathered the storm as much as the senior leaders, and you still want to know, like, what does this look like when I come out the other side? And I actually think, looking back, it shook things up massively, and a lot of people thought, well, actually, it's not just about the pandemic, it's about the fact that there's no growth here for me, and I don't know what the plans are with the business because, people the transparency was kind of at an all-time low. You didn't know what the future of the company looked like, so therefore any chances of talking about a personal development plan just disappeared. So it's good to know that you've got something in place. What about you, Anna?
Yeah, I agree in a similar position to Bethan as well. And I think at Principal, what's been made quite clear to us recently as well is that the company is growing and we are taking on a lot of new clients and our events are kind of growing in scale as well. And what we've seen is that our structure hasn't been set and completely fixed. So there is room, and our actually organisational structure has grown, and we now have the role of a project director that one of our senior project managers was recently promoted to. So it's shown us that as the company does grow, so will the structure, and the kind of people around it will all be amended to reflect that as well. So just because now kind of, or previously senior project manager was the top level you could reach in terms of project management, doesn't mean that that was kind of the end of the road and you had to be complacent with that. So there is always room for growth.
And it's also about believability, isn't it? Like, we've all sat in meetings where a manager said, yeah, you'll definitely be promoted, and it's just whether you believe that or not. And, you know, and also actions speak louder than words, so you want to see some action, like, on the back of that. What about you, Naomi?
So far, I've not been in a company long enough to even think about progression. Not in a bad way, just how things have worked out. But this is my first time, for example, working with an agency, so it's interesting to see how that kind of works and how the structures look. And it's been amazing to hear about all your stories and how that seems. But I don't know how progression looks in the situation I'm at the moment. I'm just enjoying learning and gaining new experiences and getting new things, which is why an agency is such an exciting place to be, because you're getting to have all these different opportunities with different clients. And I'm just at that stage where I'm still going to continue to learn. And once I kind of figure that out, I'll probably look at that kind of what that next step looks like and whether it's freelance or what it looks like. But
yeah, and then you've got a chance to shape that, right? Yeah. So if they don't have something in place that necessarily works with kind of your aspirations, you can maybe feed into that. And I think, does anybody here like have a sort of an idea of how they would like a personal development plan to look like? How are leaders getting it wrong? What's the solution? Heather?
I feel like that this, I mean, I don't want to be like bad mouth.
Get it out.
It's a lot of tick boxes, and it's not adapted to each person and what their goal is. So I think it would be much better if you sit down, talk to the person, what do you want, like what direction do you want to go in, and then base the personal development plan around that individual's needs, rather than it being you need to go out in the industry and, you know, go to 2 industry events a month or something, when you go and it's like, okay, but no one wanted to talk to me because I'm a project exec. So just things, yeah. So I think tailoring it to the person would, yeah, be really beneficial.
And then on top of that, what do incentives look like to kind of retain you then? So as well as a solid personal development plan, what does a company need to do to kind of keep you engaged in that period? Because it's not just about turning up to a meeting once a year, looking at your objectives. Did you meet them? Yes or no? What should be happening kind of year round?
Well, I don't know whether it's just me or all events people are like this, but we love having a plan and love following something. So I like checking in, and it's incentive knowing exactly what's going to happen and when, and if I do this, this is going to happen. It's all organised and structured, like you would do when you're planning an event. It's follow a structure. Something might go wrong on the way, but for me, like, the incentive would be knowing when it's going to happen and it actually happening when you hit that goal.
No surprises then, yeah. What about you, Joe? Same question to you.
In terms of,
so your personal development plan. So do you have one right now, and what does it look like? And if it's not good enough, what does it need to look like?
so no, I don't have a particular personal development plan because I'm kind of happy in the role that I wanted to do. But I would like to, because obviously things have changed since the pandemic as well. So I would like to see things progress, but it's a different pace, I think, for me now, personally. But for me, also, it's about checking in and knowing where you're going to go. And I like to know where the company's going and how I sort of contribute to that, and what the end goal is for everyone as well. That's quite important to me. And to be acknowledged and, you know, get a well done if you've done well. I think that's really important, and I don't think that there's enough of that as well. But also I quite like constructive feedback as well. I like to know what I've done wrong rather than someone say, oh, that was wrong, you know. Yeah. It's all about that for me.
Yeah, I definitely think I have not been at a business where they've got a really kind of engaging development plan, to be honest. They're all very, very dull. Some of them much more too formalised, I think, and they don't, like, exactly to your point, they don't work for everybody. So I think, yeah, somebody does need to come up with something that's much more engaging and taps into some of that, the good stuff, and not just the tick box stuff as well. We talked last week about saying yes to everything to try and make your way to the top. Like, it's a big thing. I think as young leaders, you sometimes feel obliged to say yes to doing all of the tasks, all hours, just to get recognition and, you know, kind of forge your way to the top. Where do you guys all sit with kind of feeling like you can confidently say no and step away from stuff? And I'm going to start with Naomi because she's smiling.
I don't like saying no, but I'm learning. So boundaries, I guess, is something, especially as a freelancer, you need to take into consideration and really have structured boundaries, which is something I'm learning right now. So if anyone has any advice. But yes, I think as a young, when you first start and when you're in college, university, whichever way you're starting the industry, saying yes is such an important part because you're getting to learn so many experiences, jumping at every opportunity. You know, it's one of those things where it's like you get out what you put in and things. So it's hard to then realise when to start saying no, I guess, or start to take control of what you want to do and think of your well-being and things like that when it comes to saying yes to everything, because it takes so much more than just getting that opportunity or, you know, wanting to make that progression. You have to take other things into consideration, and that's a learning curve, I think.
Anna, good at saying no?
No, I completely agree with Naomi as well. And it's actually something that really regularly comes up with my one-to-ones with Pedro, who's my manager sitting right there. And he will say, like, why have you said yes to doing that and that and that? And it's just, I think, again, like Naomi said, I just kind of want to be involved in everything and take on all the knowledge I can at the moment. And like, I love the traveling part, so I don't want to say no to projects. But there is a point then when your work-life balance does start to struggle. And like, I have been like victim to that, where I just find my to-do list being endless, and I kind of look at the time and it's 5:30, and then I've still got another like few hours to get through everything that I need to do. So yeah, again, that's something that I really need to work on as well.
Yeah. And I think you have to take note of your leaders. They do not say yes to everything. In fact, they say no more than anything. And it's probably why they are where they are, because they're very good at just deciding where to focus their time, which we talked about, finding your focus and your passion and where not to. Any questions? We're going to just open up for questions because we've got, I think, about five minutes. Okay. Any burning questions from the audience? I'm going to come round.
Hi. By the way, I just think that was a really inspiring session. Thank you so much. I think I've learned more in this session today than any other, so thank you for that. I'd like to know, I appreciate that so many of you are in established roles or in agencies at the moment, but what do you think that you would be looking for from a potential new employer? What would be the most important thing to you? Anyone particular? It's free for anybody.
I don't know. I think generally, obviously being naive, a lot of people look at the wage, which is going to feed back into a lot of roles. I think with young leaders, we'd be looking for that next job title to jump up and to see what I think another thing that I found quite hard recently is looking at a job advert and understanding why I don't fit into that. So I think employees maybe need to be a bit open to have that discussion with people and look at a junior role coming up and seeing what's missing and why it's missing and how they can make that, so you kind of have a halfway house in between that job role that you've got and if it's feasible to have someone new.
And you never see in a job role either what the future looks like in that role. So I was talking about this to a friend who owns a recruitment company, and I said, why don't you put something in there that encourages people to think beyond just the role that kind of you're hiring for now? Because what does that role look like in 5 years' time? So you almost want to go into that thinking, okay, there's a future here, and also as a company recruiting, you want people there for longevity, right? You don't just want them to stay for 1 or 2 years and then they move on. So, I think that was a good question. Any other questions?
I've got a question over here.
Hi. Question for you to think about yourselves, but also the people that you report to. What's the difference between leadership and management?
Who are you asking?
All of them. Any of them.
Well, I think personally leadership's about driving something forward and managing is about nurturing, but that's my interpretation and what I would like to think it meant.
Yeah, agreed. Because you can have really, really good leaders who are like terrible managers, and then vice versa as well. And I think it's really important that leaders and managers almost get themselves get their house in order. What are they doing? Are they managing or are they leading? And I think, when it goes wrong, it goes really wrong. And then it's at the detriment of your future and your career. So we've definitely seen that. I think in terms of just, any more questions?
It's not really a question, but because of the session that we're in, Dear CEO, A Future Letter to Myself, I just wondered, what would you say in a sentence to your future self?
That basically closes the session. Jess, did you pay her?
No, but perfect question.
I think I recently had a mentoring session with a lady called Lee Jagger. I don't know if anyone knows her. And one of the key words was fake it till you make it. And in a good way, obviously. But I think that's quite a good thing to take away is be ambitious. And that's hard with young people. Is remember that you can always learn what you're going to learn and don't underestimate yourself, really.
Naomi?
Start saying no.
Absolutely. Joe?
I'd say have confidence in yourself and don't be afraid to say no or to leave something that's not making you happy, because passion and communication is the way forward.
Anna?
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm also a victim to imposter syndrome, but just remember you're here now because someone's believed in you and you're there because someone thinks you can do it. So just remember that.
Heather?
Might sound cheesy, but find joy in the journey. So it's not just about the next step, even though everything you're working towards, you want to progress, you want to get to the top, you might get to that next level and you're just looking at the one above. So enjoy the actual work, enjoy the process and the journey getting to the top.
Yeah, I think so. Any more questions? No? Okay, go on. No, we've got time. We've got time
But
for
take
one
them
more.
down.
Go
We
for
need
it.
to make sure that we get people back down to the expo so you can take them with you as well.
Listen, that was amazing panel from you guys. Thank you very much. I think, look, these guys and lots of people in this room, you are the future. And I think if there are any leaders sitting in here, obviously we need to invest and nurture in these people because they're so valuable. And I think also we shouldn't forget that it's not just the leaders at kind of senior agency level who've been through kind of a real rough ride over the last 2 years. And so have we all. I mean, and our young leaders are the ones that are kind of carrying through this next journey, I guess, because they are the ones who are going to be here rebuilding that business with you. So don't take them for granted, because that definitely does happen. And give them time, open the door, listen to them. Listen to them. That's probably the biggest thing, I think, as well. Make sure that you give space for them as well. And events like this and you guys sharing and talking about your experiences, exactly what we're here for. So, yeah, thank you.